Greetings, my friends. I want to thank you all for subscribing. I want to thank all of my channel members for supporting me in this endeavor to save pop culture. And if you are not subscribed, please consider supporting this channel. We need you. Thank you. My friends, the firing of Victoria Alonso continues to resonate throughout the halls of Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Disney itself. According to Variety, woke icon Alonso was completely blindsided by her firing, and that firing has everyone on edge at Disney, because if the number 2 honcho at Marvel can be kicked to the curb like this, despite being a gay woman of color executive and a vocal activist for all the popular causes amongst the purple hair crowd, then no one is safe from the grim squeaker, and everyone is waiting for the next scythe to fall. How bad is it? In this video, I discuss the situation with my good friend Kamran Pasha. We compare notes on what our various sources are telling us about the situation, and I share some of my latest intel from my Hollywood spies about why Alonso was fired with Kamran and with you all. Enjoy, my friends, and don't forget to stay angry. All right, we are live now with Kamran Pasha, and we have a lot to talk about because we are going to discuss today the madness and panic and fear and loathing that are running rampant through the halls of Disney and Marvel and Lucasfilm and, I am told, even ESPN. Kamran has some great information that he's going to share with us today. And I would like to start out by sharing a little information from my Hollywood spies that just literally came in 23 minutes ago. This is relating to the firing of Victoria Alonso. Kamran, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Overlord. It's always wonderful to be here. Like I said, I think you've got an incredible channel, and you've persisted despite a lot of naysayers, and we're finally getting to a place where a lot of the things that you've predicted, and I've also hopefully come on board with predicting some of them, are coming true. And I think it's wonderful to see the things that you were wise enough to see a year or 2 or even 3 years ago coming true.
I'm just thrilled because, we're seeing the pieces come together. And I've got a few more pieces to share with you, Kamran, here. This was, as I said, sent to me now 24 minutes ago, and it says, here's what we have so far. This is from my Hollywood spies. We were told last week someone was going to be let go. We couldn't get any major details. However, we've been told that Victoria Alonso was fired for multiple reasons, in no particular order. 1, Kevin Feige passed the buck on to her. We're not saying Kevin is safe, but he let her take most of the blame for the failures, etc., and so on at Marvel. 2, she was behind most of the Marvel shows that got canceled/delayed and was making life difficult for Bob Iger. 3, she wasn't willing to compromise on X-Men. She wanted them called the Mutants, and that was it. We've also been told she's not the last. We now believe that what we were told about Bob Chapek just being put in charge to get rid of certain people is more true than we thought. So Kamran, what do you think about all that? How does that jive with what your sources are telling you?
Well, that jives 100% with what my sources have been telling me. So we'll get into it over the course of our conversation today, but I have several different sources inside of Disney. There are different people. Each has provided me scoops that have been proven true. And so I put out one scoop in yesterday on my Patreon from the source I'll call Sparrow. And they were saying that this Alonso firing is the beginning of a much bigger phenomenon. And they were indicating what you are saying, which is that she was fired. Right. And I think there's been, there's always some bizarros who are like, no, well, I'm sure she resigned. No. When you see the trade articles that came out, even they were like, no reason was given for her departure. When someone willingly leaves, they allow them the graciousness of a goodbye statement, moving on to spend time with my family, some other story. Right. When there's no information, it means a person was eliminated very rapidly. and no one has the time to come up with a cover story, or frankly cares enough to do it, right? That because the person was let go on bad terms. So that was clear from the trades. But everything that your sources are now coming to fits in the paradigm of what I've been hearing. That, and it just makes sense, because Marvel has been struggling. We talk about it on your channel for a long time now, and frankly, Marvel has not been at its peak since Avengers Endgame. It really felt like that was the end of Marvel, and the subsequent periods have not been that interesting. And I remain of the view that the only good thing that I've seen come on Marvel television, surprisingly, was Ms. Marvel, which ended up being a very entertaining and family-friendly show, and it ended up being reshot completely from scratch in order to make it that, right? But yeah, I mean that's what people don't realize. The show didn't work. I have several friends who worked on the show, and they're like, it didn't work. And then it was completely reshot, and by good old Bob Chapek says the show ain't gonna work, and it worked. But that's one of the very rare exceptions of Marvel. The movies haven't worked. The TV shows largely haven't worked, and they're not profitable. And certainly not profitable to what they're capable of being. So, as a survivor, Kevin Feige was always going to pass the buck. He was always going to do it, right? In the same way that our friend Kathleen Kennedy, I'm sure, has been passing the buck. Do you remember this, Doomcock? You remember in the early days of when the fandom resistance began to The Last Jedi, when I think your channel came into existence, there was a young African-American woman that had been feted about at Lucasfilm as, the great, the new person that was going to be the diverse person of wisdom inside of Lucasfilm, that New York Times article did a piece on her, whatever. And if you recall, in the aftermath of Solo, she was let go. Not Kathleen Kennedy, not Carrie Beck, not any of the powerful people. They found the very person that they had held up to the New York Times as our lovely black woman inside of diversity. They let her go. There's always a head that you have to roll. It's just to protect your own. So this is what Kevin Feige was going to do. And, it makes sense to me that what your sources are saying, that she's been a thorn in Iger's side. She was an absolute thorn in Chapek's side. If you recall, Doomcock, do you remember this? Remember last year when all the Florida political drama was happening? Ms. Alonso came out, I think it was the GLAAD Awards, publicly condemning her own boss.
Right.
It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. Named him by name and said, "Do better, Bob." Are you insane? He's writing your paychecks. You want to have that conversation, have it within the office. You're probably going to get fired if you do face-to-face. It's even crazier for you to do this in public at this award ceremony, criticizing your boss. She survived it. She had that much clout to survive that, but she couldn't survive this. And I think part of it, and maybe this ties into what your sources are saying here, is that the fact that it had to be Bob Iger to let her go, right? Bob Chapek let her go, he would be attacked as, here's an example of white conservative guy, sympathetic to the Florida anti-gay stuff, however he was being presented, right? And he's letting the one Latina, lesbian, woke activist with all the flags you need, right? He's letting him, right. And who had the courage to stand up to him, he's letting her go. How could he do that without facing backlash from the system? He didn't. Whereas Iger, I'm sure when Mr. Iger returned, I'm sure people like Ms. Alonso thought, great, I won. I'm safe now. That
right.
Chapek clown is gone. My old boss is back, and he loves me. And she's gone. Because the old boss had enough.
Yes, I don't think Bob Chapek had enough juice, given all the constraints on him and the split Disney board, to make a big move like that. Iger does. Iger does.
Like only Nixon didn't open China, right?
Right, exactly.
Get rid of the woke.
And things had to get much worse financially and ratings-wise and everything else. I mean, they're losing subscribers. They admitted it. They are, in the hole for 5.5 billion. That's how much they want to cut to try and save things. 7,000 employees. Well, it's not going to be the employees that are profitable and actually doing the kind of work that Disney can actually benefit from. It's going to be all the posers and the, dead weight.
You've hit a pivotal issue, because when those announcements happened, and I've said this, I understand that many of our friends in the fan community are so burned out from the roller coaster drama we've been on for a decade now, and the wokery and all the other nonsense, and people, Kathleen Kennedy will be gone tomorrow, and then we keep waiting, tomorrow is another day away, right? We keep waiting. And right. I understand people are burned out of that. And so when this came out, people were like, well, how, when I posted this on my Patreon, and I know you were talking about it, a lot of people in the family were like, so what? He's gonna really fire 7,000 people. I bet you he's gonna fire the 7,000 good people and keep all the wokey morons in there. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because if he's being told to fire these people because shareholders like Nelson Peltz are putting a gun to his head and said, clean house, or we're going to start a shareholder rebellion, he's going to have to clean house of people that are, as you said, not profitable. And the first evidence of that just came out under a month ago, when the very first firings were the people in the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion groups, the first people to be let go. And then at the time, I said, well, look, here's your evidence. Who are the first people being let go? Is these people that thought they were untouchable. They're the first to be fired. And people said, I'll believe it when I see it. I was like, we just saw it. Well, I need more. Then Ms. Alonso is let go. And people are like, it's not enough. I need more. I mean, what do you want?
I mean, that's towards the top. That's towards the top.
I mean, she's the number 2. She's the number 2 Marvel.
I know. I mean, that's a big damn deal. And she has not only the thick insulation of every check mark that damn near that she could have, but she also has been there. She's got seniority. I mean, she's been there since Iron Man. 17 years, and boom, gone. I mean, that sends a massive message, and has struck fear in the hearts of the halls of Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, even ESPN, because if she can go, anybody can go. And, my Hollywood spies have been telling me for quite a while that they've been hearing rumblings. They were non-committal about it themselves, but they were hearing rumblings that Bob Chapek was brought in primarily to be the fall guy and clean house, to do the dirty work, to go ahead and implement this purging of the radical elements inside Disney.
The Chapek plan.
Out that he wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. I don't think he had the juice, or Iger was conflicted and just could not let him be, or the board was more split than they thought. I'm not sure, but I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's just, I think Bob Chapek was brought in to do what Iger had been unwilling or perhaps afraid to do before, because Iger's a politician. I've seen comments on your videos where people are like, oh, Iger's a wokey woke. I don't think so. He's a politician. When he thought woke Maoist cultural indoctrination was going to get him elected president, he backed it, right? And he saw it wasn't helping him, and he walked away from it. He has no emotional commitment to that ideology. Ms. Alonso does, by her own admission, right? He doesn't.
Right.
But Bob Chapek was brought in because people are like, this guy, we can't trust this guy to clean up. Susan Arnold's like, let's bring in some new blood who's going to, shake this place up. And Bob Chapek tried to shake this place up, and you and I saw how badly the system attacked him, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, he whether he had juice or not, the system was so far against him that there was no way that they were going to let him pull it off. It's exactly what Richard Nixon said. John F. Kennedy could not have opened up China. Even if John F. Kennedy couldn't, because he would have been accused of being a communist. He was already a Democrat, and he'd been accused of being a communist sympathizer for being a liberal. Whereas a virulently anti-communist politician who spent his whole life in that camp is the only one that Americans would trust to open China in a way that would not be detrimental to American interests, right? And that's why Nixon had to do it. So Iger, who was seen even by the fandom as the protector of the woke, is the only one that could eliminate the woke, because no one is going to accuse him, because already people till this day are saying, I don't trust it. He's a wokey woke guy. It's working, because now people aren't saying he's doing an ideological attack. They're saying, even now, if you see the news reports that are coming out, I believe a reporter for New York Magazine has been tweeting all of these things now that Ms. Alonso is out. Within hours of that announcement, this New York Magazine reporter has been tweeting all of the sources he's telling how incompetent she was, how poorly she treated the visual effects people that she was dealing with. And so already they're putting a narrative out that had nothing to do with her political ideology, but she wasn't a good manager and she lost the money. I'm sure it was a combination of both, as your sources are indicating, right? And so I'm source that's what it was. But had Bob Chapek removed her, the conversation would be he fired a woman of color who is LGBTQ, who is an activist, and that's the conversation. But no one's making that conversation right now. They're talking about she wasn't good in her job. So
they're trying to not have that be the central point that is
Mhm.
being in the narrative, although it may be true, or at least partially true, but they don't want that. I mean, they don't want to actually label it in that way and stir up the natives,
And
as it
why
were.
wouldn't they want it? Because the system realizes that it needs to get done, right?
Yes,
When Chapek was trying to do it, they didn't let him do it. They were
right.
in denial, and they were in denial. But now Iger can do it, and because Iger is a darling of the Hollywood trade media, he has the cover in the same way that Richard Nixon was a darling of the anti-communist contingent of the United States, right? So they could trust him when he shows up in Beijing.
Right, exactly. It seems to me that Disney, at least Chapek and Iger, have in a sense shared a strategy that I will just call show and tell,
Mhm.
which is essentially Chapek was allowing certain areas of the company enough rope to hang themselves to
Yes.
demonstrate to the board, this is not profitable, but this is profitable.
Yeah.
He was not able to succeed in that regard because he ran out of time.
He ran time, and he
But
was a lightning rod. He was a lightning rod because he aggressively took moves and was labeled a political this and that as a result.
right. But then when Iger comes back in, the situation had deteriorated even worse. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's not merely the situation at Disney, but it's also just in general the financial situation around the globe. And their fortunes have dipped to the extent that now he is empowered to go ahead and do something to ensure the survival of the company, regardless of ideology or the luxuries of catering to the purple-haired holdos in the company. It's just the way it's got to be. It's going to happen, and profitability is no longer optional for these guys because they're in a deep enough financial hole. So they just had to. The circumstances had to be right for him to move. But I would like to know what you're hearing about the level of Sturm und Drang, angst, fear, and loathing inside the halls of Disney right now in reaction to this earth-shattering news.
Okay. So I'm going to give you two things. So I have two sources. One I'm going to call Bluebird. They're separate sources. Each of them has given me. Bluebird was one that gave me the scoop that that Bob Chapek was going to do hiring freezes and was doing layoffs, and that scoop came in 48 hours before the trades reported it. So I know for a fact this person knows what they're talking about internal
Right.
dynamics, right? And so Bluebird, as I call them, is you came out to me with this report. Report is it? From their own knowledge from where they are within the Disney corporate structure, they said that an order had come, essentially an order coming from Iger's office when it's an order, right? An order had come to accelerate the layoffs. That's one of the reasons Alonso was let go so quickly, right? And without essentially any warning, because Iger said we were out of time. It's not clear why he was out of time, but Bluebird thinks maybe the banking crisis that we're going through right now played into it. The financial pressure inside Disney had suddenly accelerated to the point Iger said, I need 4,000 people from this 7,000 target out by April. That's 2 weeks. You don't have a choice. You have to accelerate them. And Bluebird said the departments had been slow moving in actually giving lists. And so Iger had ordered, I want you to create lists of names to be let go, 4,000 names. And I want them in, I'm sure it's not going to land on Iger's desk, but into the human resources system. I want those names in now, and I want those people out by April 1st. And then Alonso was immediately let go as a result of that. So Bluebird said this is a part of an actual order. And Bluebird, who has, asking a lot of affection for ESPN, the Bluebird thinks ESPN is one of the most valuable parts of the company, has been saying even ESPN is not safe, right? And nobody's safe. Bluebird actually went as far as saying that again, this is Bluebird saying, and they were saying I'm speculating. Bluebird said I think even Kathleen Kennedy is not safe. That was their speculation. That's how, when Alonso's firing happened, Bluebird said that it was made clear that nobody was safe if the number 2 of Marvel is not safe, who has all these
Right.
protector. And so that was the first thing, and I put that on. I shared that with you. Put that on my Patreon. Then the second thing is, and I've left this other source alone because there's a lot of heat on them right now. The source I call Sparrow that's revealed a lot of information. I've met them. I know who they are. I know they're for real. That's a challenge you and I often face, is that we're approached by sources who claim to be within the system of these places, and are we being misled or being given misinformation? Because this source was giving me so much controversial information, the person that had facilitated the conversation, I said, I need to meet them. I need to know this is not someone jerking me around. and lying to me. And I met them, and I met Sparrow. I know who they are. I know why they're doing it, and I know that they absolutely have access to all of these people and this information. And it's actually when I realized who they were, it was quite overwhelming. I was like, okay, wow, there's a very powerful person who's taking out some of their colleagues, and I know why they're doing it. But Sparrow, I'd left them alone because there's a lot of heat inside of Lucasfilm right now where people are trying to figure out who this person is. That's been revealing a lot of the internal things on there. And so you just contact me when you feel safe to do it. And then out of nowhere, they contacted me yesterday and saying, I have a bunch of scoops to give you. And it was pretty intense stuff. So let's add the first thing with regard to what's happening. They said that the Alonso firing has absolutely caused chaos inside of Lucasfilm. People didn't see it coming. Alonso, even though they were part of a sister company of Marvel, they weren't part of Lucasfilm, was someone these people admired. She represented what they aimed to become, right?
Of course.
Victoria Alonso. She's this woke activist, and she had gotten to the number 2. She isn't just some story group member of Lucasfilm. She's the right-hand person of Kevin Feige, who's seriously influencing all these projects, right?
Right.
And that's what these Lucasfilm people want to become. They want to be Kathleen Kennedy's right hand or her successor. So Alonso represented that. And if Alonso could be guillotined like that without any warning, they became afraid. And he said that there's panic within the company right now. People are desperately trying to essentially coming up with almost like, excuses as to why they shouldn't be fired. Like, it's literally they're coming up with lists and things of what arguments they're going to make to try to present to the Axeman when the Axeman shows up. No, you can't let me go. This is what I've done for Lucasfilm. This is what I'm going to do in the future. That's how scared they are. And they should be preparing their resumes, but instead they're preparing their "please don't fire me" speech.
But of course, by the time the Axeman shows up, it's too late. It's too late. There will not be any case. They'd have to make the case to somebody above the Axeman, not the guy holding the axe.
My brother, you understand corporate politics better. This is the problem with the Lucasfilm people, is that they have the Lucas from the story group, the flying monkeys, as I call them. They've been in this sheltered, deluded reality for a decade. They don't know how the world works. People like Mr. Hidalgo and others, they don't know how the world works because they keep people like Hidalgo going off there mocking the fans, mocking people for crying at Luke Skywalker coming back, insulting people online. And they keep being protected by Miss Kennedy. So they think they can do whatever they want. They're living in mommy's got them in the crib. So they think that when mommy comes to take them out of the crib and throw them out of the house, that they can reason with that situation. They're not prepared for it.
No. And, this is a return to core values, at least to some extent, for Disney, because, my God, I've never been to business school. I'm not interested in business. I'm more of a creative type. Mm-hmm. But even I know the customer is always right. Yes. And you do not want to alienate even one customer if you can help it, much less an entire percentage of the American population, by needlessly going into these hot button issues, LGBTQIA, MOUSE, indoctrination in videos, slamming fans who disagree with the, cultural vandalism of things that came before. And even they've drawn fire on the left for, instead of actually creating stories based on, indigenous people's myths and tales and historical stuff like the stuff that you're working on regarding, the Middle East and so forth.
But authentic stories that we actually care about from these cultures that would expand human experience and knowledge.
And be original and be every bit as naturally and organically diverse and not have to twist history into knots by inserting diversity that simply wasn't there in that milieu at that juncture in time. But they're too lazy because they know that actually they'd have to work at publicizing that. They'd have to gamble. They'd have to go ahead and get committed artists who are passionate about these stories and then manage to permeate the American consciousness. And they're too damn scared to do anything but give recycled leftovers from the cultural table just by, stunt casting and, affirmative hiring and so on and so forth. It's insulting to all sides. And it's a damn shame. But right now, it seems that the tide truly is turning, Kamran, because you're right. Bob Chapek, boom, gone, just like that. Victoria Alonso, gone, boom, just like that. As little fanfare on all of them. You just never even hear it. They don't get to even wave goodbye. They don't get to do the Nixon, peace sign on the, ramp to the helicopter.
At that level, you hit the pivotal issue here, Doomcock. At that level, the person, how does that phrase go? The bigger they are, the harder they fall, right?
Right.
And so at that level, when someone at that level has to be removed, it's a decapitation. There is no time because they have power. Because they have power, you cannot give them time to retaliate, to come up with an alternative scheme to get you fired, right? Which is what happened to Peter Rice. Peter Rice last year tried to get Bob Chapek fired, and he didn't, and he lauded out, took his sweet time with it, and Chapek said, "Oh, you're coming at me? We'll wait our moment, and then we're going to strike, and you're fired," right? So Rice didn't know how to play that game, but someone like Iger knows how to play that game. That's why when it came time to get rid of Chapek, they didn't even tell. He was at an Elton John concert. And he's like, "Get off the stage, boss, you're not the boss anymore." I mean, this Alonso is like, look, I can even imagine what your source is. I can imagine the conversation that Kevin Feige is like, "Look, we need to have a talk here. We have the final word. It's going to be called the X-Men. It's not called the Mutants." And she's going to do her standard mantra. I think she's protected. Kevin, I've told you 1,000 times, X-Men is it's offensive to women, and it's time to use a new term. I'm going to call it the mutants, and if you don't like it, you can have my resignation. And I'm sure she's dropped that empty threat many times. And Kevin's like, "Okay, I'll have your resignation. Thanks." Good.
Well, thank you for that, Victoria. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
and it's going to be the X-Men.
I'm sure it was that. She walked into his trap, right? It was a confrontation, and she thought it was going to go the way it's gone every time. And it didn't this time. She wasn't given time to react, and she was out.
The times, they are a-changing. And I want to go ahead and also talk about the issue of Kathleen Kennedy, because you went ahead and told me about a supposed meeting that Iger is wanting to have. You phrased it as a confrontation.
Yes.
With Kathleen Kennedy. And, it may have been prompted over the lawsuit regarding the Acolyte.
Karen McCarthy, she's a very successful producer who's made big movies and is highly connected. She's moved stuff with Tom Hanks. This is someone in the circle, and my sources confirmed that she knows Iger personally over the course of her career. So he knows her. She's not a stranger to him. He knows who she is. And
and possibly to placate her, he invited her to sit in on this confrontational meeting with Kathleen Kennedy, which I would have given a few teeth to actually be able to be in that room myself.
I don't know that it's happened yet. I spoke to Sparrow about it yesterday, and the implication seems to be that the meeting is still to come.
It hasn't happened yet.
By these current events with Alonso, but the new Sparrow told me about 2 weeks ago that when it was literally, they contacted me the day after Karen announced that she was suing the Acolyte for essentially breach of contract and loss of opportunity. They literally had hired her as the line producer, executive producer, to run the show, and then within 2 weeks they let her go because they didn't have any money. Strange that a show that everyone keeps telling me is in production doesn't have any money to pay their executive producer, and then when she complained about it, they gave her $5,000 to get lost.
Oh my God! Which is, that's an insult.
I mean, her contract would have been at least $1 million, right, for at that level, right, to run that show, at least.
For sure, and she lost out on another production that already then staffed up with a different showrunner when she could have been right there, secure, and outside of this madness.
Yeah, and it was an Apple TV production with Colin Farrell, who's getting a major jump in his career nowadays, right? And it's called Sugar, and she was supposed to be the executive producer of that, and she turned it down because she believed that this was a real production. And then what I think was happening there was Ms. Hedlund was doing the standard, illusionary game. Well, if I can bring Karen McCarthy in there and say, "Look, she's running the show. We got a real person." Hey, this would have been Bob Chapek's days. "Hey, Bob, can you have the money for my show now? Look, I got a real person." And Bob's like, "We're not making this show. I told you already." And crap. Well, I already made her an offer. I was like, "That's not my problem." And it's like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna have to rescind the offer, and good luck to her. And of course, this isn't normal behavior in Hollywood. You don't make an offer to someone of Karen McCarthy's level and then rescind it. You don't do that. And if you do it, you pay them in full to keep them from doing what she's doing, which is suing them publicly. There's nothing more humiliating than this, because she's saying, you gave me $5,000 to get lost. Do you know who I am? I've made movies with Tom Hanks. What do you think this is, right? And this is a humiliating embarrassment. And so when this happened, the next day, Sparrow got in touch with me, and so I want you to know that this has caused this lawsuit has caused major consternation inside of Disney, having Disney C-suite top level people saying, "What is this show? Were we making the show? What's happening? Why is she suing?" And then Iger, who knows McCarthy and knows she's a credible person, then according to Sparrow, who knows the players, Sparrow says Iger sent an order. It was a command to Kathleen Kennedy. We're going to have a one-on-one. I don't want to talk to you on the phone. You're going to come into the office. You're going to come into my office, and you're going to sit down with me, and you're going to explain what happened here. And that was information I had. That it was not a friendly conversation, but you're going to come in and you're going to explain this to me, why we're being sued over this show, right? And then that was information I had 2 weeks ago. Then Sparrow got to me yesterday and said, "Oh, I have new information for you. That Iger's people reached out to Karen McCarthy and requested that she join that meeting, that she be there when Kennedy walks in." And Kennedy be like, "Oh crap, there's McCarthy, who my underling Headland screwed, and now I have to defend myself in front of McCarthy." So why this woman? And again, it's believable because Karen McCarthy works at that level. She knows Iger, she knows Kennedy, she knows Tom Hanks, she knows these players, right? She's not a low level crew member. She's in the inner circle of Hollywood power. And of course, it would make sense for her to say, "Hey, so why'd you screw me?" But Sparrow said that McCarthy's attorney said, "You want to stay away from this situation," probably for her own lawsuit, and probably because something ugly is happening inside of Disney. If this is confrontations happening, so you don't want to get involved in it. Whatever's going to happen between Iger and Kennedy, this is Godzilla versus Mothra. You don't want to get in the middle of it, right? And so she declined, citing her attorney, saying, "I'm not going to come." But she was invited. I don't know when that meeting is going to happen. It could happen last night. It might happen next week. Farrell won't tell me that yet, but the meeting is still on the books as far as I'm aware, and things have accelerated because of Alonso's firing.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Who knows? Iger may have wanted her right there to when Kennedy makes certain claims, just to turn to her and say, "Is this true?" You know what I mean? I mean, he may have wanted it for that reason.
That's exactly right, Dumcock. Because you if this is a face to face, we don't have time for lawyers. We're going to resolve this right now in this room. What would happen? Headland said this to you? Headland said she had a $10 million budget. Hey, Kathleen, did you give her $10 million? Where's it on the books? I didn't give her $10 million. So why is she doing this? And the other thing then that Sparrow revealed to me, which is earth-shattering, and again, I have met Sparrow. I know who they are. I know they know this, right? They said to me, because of this Karen McCarthy lawsuit, and because of this drama of Iger sitting down with Kathleen, you can explain this to me, Iger has authorized, in fact, ordered Disney accounting, corporate central accounting, to go in and audit Lucasfilm's books. Lucasfilm said, we'll look into it and get you a report as to where the money is going. And he said, "No, I'm not going to have you look at the books. I'm looking at your books," right? And so that's an internal audit by the corporate head, which suggests that they are afraid of legal and criminal ramifications. Because what Sparrow did reveal to me in my last post 2 weeks ago was that it is not clear where this money is coming from. It's not on the books. Sparrow was able to track a couple of 50,000 euro payments that are credited. Again, the Sparrow's in a position that they are able to know what's in the books. And Sparrow told me I can find 2 entries for 50,000 euros recently for filming in Europe, for some scenes for the Acolyte, not for a whole show, but 50,000 euros will get you a couple of days worth of work. I mean, this is a show like that's going to cost millions of euros. Right? But 50,000 will get you through a few days, right? And so apparently about 100,000 was allotted from different accounts. But Sparrow said, but there were other things that I saw in the books that didn't make sense to me. Other monies that were being allotted to productions that I didn't recognize that appear to be linked to Headland. So it feels like the money is being shuffled back and forth against general accounting principles to these shadowy things to finance this, whatever they're doing. And whatever is being done is to hide the money, and it's not being done according to the ways that are acceptable to Disney accounting. That's why Disney accounting is like, show us where this money is going, show us who's authorizing it, show us how it's happening, and explain it to us. Which, if it is against their internal auditing rules and against any SEC rules, there's civil and criminal liability there.
This is an amazing turn of events that's happening extremely fast. It's unfolding very, very quickly. There are deadlines apparently of April 1st and beyond that, one feels a great sense of urgency on the part of Disney at this point.
That's why this whole thing, where the first source, that I mentioned, Bluebird, was saying that there's an order to get this done now. Something's urgent, and Bluebird is suggesting they don't have proof of this, but their feeling is it's something to do with the banking crisis, because right after all the banking crisis began a few days ago is when the order came out. So something's happening financially that's causing them. We got to clean the house now, for some financial reason. It makes sense to me, again, based on timing, in the same way that I believe FTX had something to do with Chapek's departure, because the timing was the same. So setting that aside,
this is some very valuable information.
Well, I want to share this right now, because something just got corroborated while you and I were speaking.
Oh, wow!
So one of the things that Sparrow said to me in that call we had yesterday was that the Damon Lindelof movie is dead. The Damon Lindelof, a Star Wars movie, Lindelof has been told directly, stop talking about this movie. You're out. It's done. It's finished. We're not making this movie, and you need to shut up about it. And so if you remember, just people were saying a week ago, this movie's happening for sure. Absolutely. 1 week ago, they were saying this. It's good. And so Sparrow said that yesterday. If you look right now on deadline.com, as you and I were speaking, official confirmation, Damon Lindelof is off the Star Wars movie.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, I said this from the start. When this story came out, I did a video about it, and I pointed out several things. I pointed out that it is absolutely from the secret hideout and Bad Robot playbook to announce bullshit shows that do not exist. Star Trek 4, over and over and over again. Section 31, over and over and over again. These people love to go ahead and float trial balloon fake projects in order to perhaps sucker investors in to go ahead and invest in this thing. I can't tell you how many times they've done that. So when it was Lindelof, who was a disciple of the cinematic Antichrist, Jar Jar Abrams, I knew, this is just more minor demonry from these people. And Kathleen Kennedy as well has been known to try to announce projects prematurely in order to force Disney's hand to go ahead and fund them or go along with it. So
like the Acolyte.
Like the Acolyte, exactly. Because that was years ago in 2020.
Yeah.
And I just knew that this was bullshit. And so I'm very delighted today that this is not happening, because I despise everyone that ever was associated with Lost. I will never forgive them.
I've worked with some of them, and let's just say we didn't part well.
Yes. Well, you have integrity, okay? You have narrative integrity at the very least, and they did not. They never knew what they were talking about. David Fury said as much when he quit in season 1. So these people have no plan for all these mysteries they're laying down. It was a complete bullshit.
I mean, I heard that when the show was released. I had friends who were like, oh man, they were like, oh my God, they just got their season, they got 13 episodes, just got ordered for full season. He said they're panicking in the room. They don't have a plan for the end of the season, much less 5 years from now. They didn't think it was going to go more than 13 episodes. They didn't even plan that out.
So anyway, this is wonderful confirmation I mean, you can go back and look at the video. It's my speculation. I couldn't believe that this would happen. And my sources even said, this was just this is just him trying to, work with Kennedy. And of course, Kennedy then tried to leverage it, tried to say to one of the Bobs at the time, well, I think it was Bob Iger, now that this has generated some heat in the press, why don't I stick around and go ahead and shepherd this project through? And he was like, no. So I'm delighted.
And the funny thing is, I'll reveal as we're winding down, as you and I were talking, I had just before we began, I put out a quick flash on my Patreon that Lindelof is out according to Deadline, right? Just as we began, and I credited our friend Sparrow. And just now, as you and I were talking, they just sent me a text saying, thank you for the credit. They saw it. They're like, yep, I told you that little off is out. And so right in the middle of this, my personal spy just sent us a text saying, yeah, thank you for letting people know I was right.
Absolutely wonderful. Man, well, this has been a great conversation. I have enjoyed it. Kamran, please tell us about your Patreon and how people can join.
Sure, wonderful. So the information that I'm sharing is on my Patreon, and it's still pretty private. There's a few hundred people on board. It's not as large as Doomcock's, tens of thousands of followers. I think you might be in the hundreds of thousands of followers at this point, but definitely, you have a global audience, and I'm honored to be able to participate. But come join my Patreon. I'm sure Doomcock would put a link on it. Just Patreon / my name KamranPasha. So come there. I put on my personal opinions, my analyses, my film reviews, all the standard stuff you would get on just a Hollywood commentary thing. But I also have these incredible sources that over the last 2 years have come to trust me, people at a very, very high level. I know Doomcock has sources at that level as well. And he knows it's very hard to get people at that level to trust you and believe in your integrity. And I've gotten those people, and they're willing to put their own careers a little bit on jeopardy to get this information out because they believe so much in change is needed in Hollywood for the long-term success of all of us. So please come join us on the Patreon. I think you'll find it of value.
Excellent, my friend. Thank you. And thank you for joining us here at the Center of the Earth to discuss these latest developments. From the Center of the Earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock and Kamran Pasha bidding you all, my friends, stay angry. Ha 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 ha.